Hey everyone, this is Brian from ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at a 12-bar blues where we play the lead using chords. And this is a great technique to learn because it really unlocks the neck for you. You start to understand chords in different voicings and how those chords connect to each other. You can use these chords in your lead playing, you can use them in your rhythm playing, and I think it just makes you a much better all-around musician to understand how to play chords in different positions. We just have 3 chords in this, but you can see I was playing chords all over the neck. And so this was a suggestion from Jim, who's an Active Melody site member, so thank you to you, Jim, for suggesting this. I think it's a great idea for a lesson, and there's just a lot of material we're going to cover in this. I developed this style, by the way, from playing acoustic guitar in these jams. I do a jam every week with a group of guys, maybe 8 to 10 musicians on average, and I can't hear myself when I'm playing acoustic guitar, so I had to start banging out chords to really kind of sort of stand out. And so I've just sort of adapted that style into my electric lead playing as well. So this works on an acoustic or electric guitar. I've got this lesson split into 2 parts. So in this video we're going to take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half, as well as download the tablature and the MP3 jam track, which I have in 2 tempos. I have a slower tempo for those of you that are just getting started with this. You can get all of that at ActiveMelody.com. Just look for EP156. That's the lesson number for this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started with part 1. Alright, let's talk through our tone settings. I'll be very brief and then we can get into the lesson. Playing on a Telecaster, middle pickup position. The tone is all the way up. The volume's at about 85–90%-ish. And then going out of the guitar and into a pure boost pedal, which is made by Moore, M-O-O-E-R, and I have all of the dials at about 50%. That just gives you that extra little bit of punch, so it's not just clean channel, and you get a little bit of dirt in the tone. I think it sounds nice for this. The only other effect I'm using is a delay, which I'm using a Strymon Timeline delay pedal, but that's overkill for this. All you need is a you could use a TC Electronic Flashback or any of that. And you don't have to have delay. You don't have to have a boost pedal. You can play this clean channel right into your amp and it'll sound awesome. Or you can just use an acoustic guitar. But that's what I'm using. And then the amp I'm going into is the PV Classic 20. It's just a head. And I use that because I can go out of that and into this camera that you're watching this on. And it's got this XLR out, which is nice. I have the reverb at about 40%. So that is my tone settings. Let's get into the lesson now. So this is a 12-bar blues in the key of E, and the chords are your standard 1-4-5. You have an E chord, an A chord, and then there's a B or a B7 chord for the 5 chord, and it just repeats over and over again. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with this little progression that goes like this. We're going to start with that. Now that is actually very, very easy to do. Even if you're an absolute beginner, you can follow along and play this. Let me show you the left hand first, and then we'll get into the strum pattern with the right hand. So the left hand, we start by making an E chord shape here. I'm going to assume you know how to make an E. If you don't, you can look at my fingers. But that's an E chord. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take away our ring finger. We're going to leave the other 2 fingers. And what you end up with, hear that note? That makes that an E7 chord. And it's nice because it works all 6 strings. Another way you can do an E7 is to add your pinky here. But either of those is considered an E7. Now what's cool about this progression is we're going to take our fingers on our left hand, we're going to slide it up a fret, we're going to slide it up again, and we're going to slide it up again. So what you have is this great little progression that you can always use if you're in a jam session and you want to do something more creative with your rhythm playing. You have this now that you can pull out, that's really what the progression is. Now the strum pattern goes like this. So it goes down, down, up, down, up. That's how you want to say it in your head. Down, down, up, down, up. So the first down is on the open E string or the open 6 string. Down, and then we're going to strum the chord. Down. So you got down, down, and now we're going to go up, down, up. So putting it together, looks like that. Now we're going to slide our hand. So practice that before you move on. Just try and get that timing. Okay, now once we come up to this point, I'm going to come up here and play this little kind of jazzy sounding chord. What I'm playing, you know, I said we have 3 chords. I lied in one respect. If you're being literal about it, this is still an E chord. We're just playing an E6 chord. So we are going to do some different variations on those chords, but that's what I'm playing, and it's very easy to do. You hear this in a lot of James Brown songs, a lot of funk, because it's so rhythmic. But I'm just barring the first 3 strings here on the 9th fret. I play that, slide down 1, and then come back up to where I started. That's all I did, and that's an E6 chord. So just if you want to know how to get to those 6 chords for all your chords, here's an easy little trick to remember that. If you know how to make an E chord right here using the A chord shape, so in other words, if you know an A chord down here, you slide it up here till you're playing an E. Look at that. That's where that is in relation to that chord shape. So just remember that. So now, if you think about playing an A down in first position, there's your A6, right? So just kind of remember that if you want to jazz up your playing that way. That's one way to do it. All right, so let me back up and I'll play all the way up to the E6 chord slowly. Now notice right there I just strummed that one once. So once we came to this position, just hit it once so that I could take my hand off the fretboard and come up here. And now we're back to the opens E string. Just keep that going. Now notice after, hear the little extra muted strums? Just to keep the rhythm going. My right hand stays in motion. I stress this on just about every lesson. If you're playing a rhythmic thing, and you know it has a percussive element to it, your hand has to stay in motion, even when you're not playing. So get that? And that's kind of how it works. Now I've got that in the tablature and the on-screen tab viewer. You can obviously slow that down and get very precise with it. But that's what I'm doing. So, okay, so that's the first time through. Now the second time through it repeats up to here. Just the first 2. And then I played pretty cool little country sounding thing. Or maybe you could consider that rockabilly. But what I played there was played that, and then it starts with a hammer-on between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret on the 2nd string. But the key to that is playing strings 1 and 2 like this. So you're not just playing the 2nd string, you're playing strings 1 and 2 at the same time. And even though that's doubling up, it's the same note, it just fattens it up and it makes it sound really cool when you go. you can see what you're doing there is this string is droning or ringing out as this one walks down. So that's how it starts. It goes. Now before I move on and show you the rest, just remember that. That's another little takeaway in this lesson is you have that to work with. So if you're in a jam session, somebody's got a blues in E, and it's your turn to play a solo, and you're not sure what to do, that's a really cool little place to go. That sounds good, and it sounds like you really know what you're doing. And well, you will be after this, right? But that's how that works. Okay. So now after that, then I did. Now this will be something else you can add to that lick, that little knowledge piece. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to strings 2 and 3, and I'm going into this position. So my index finger is on the 3rd fret, 2nd string. My middle finger is on the 4th fret, 3rd string, and I slide into it. And then I take my hand off the fretboard and play strings 2 and 3 without any fretting. Now I'm barring there on the 2nd fret, so now we're playing the 2nd fret, strings 2 and 3. So we have, and then to conclude it, I'm just building the E chord, but I start here on the 3rd string, playing the open 3rd string, and then I hammer onto the 1st fret on the 3rd string, and did an upstroke there on the high E string. So if we back up and put that together, now that's a song in and of itself, I'm sure, if you wanted to really work with that and put a bass track to it. And you could make a whole song out of that groove. You've heard that in a lot of songs, but that's just a real bluesy little run using double stops, which just means 2 strings at once, to create that. So now, if you piece the 2 things together, you have all of that. So now let's back up. We'll start at the very beginning. We'll do the progression all the way up to that point. There's your E6. Now we're into the A position. Okay? After that, we come down and play an A. Really, it's just the open 5th string, which is an A note. And then after I play that, I do this little walk up. Now that's a bluegrass run, but that's a great one to know. It sounds kind of country, kind of bluegrass, but I think of it as a bluegrass thing because I hear all those guys always doing that. So what I'm doing after I hit the open 5th string, I keep the bar there to keep that A in position. So then I take my middle finger and come to the 3rd fret, 5th string, and do a hammer-on between the 3rd fret and the 4th fret, using my middle finger and ring finger. So we have, and there's an upstroke on the 4th string behind this bar here. All right, so let's back it up. We have, now ring finger goes down on the 4th fret, 4th string, and we do another upstroke behind this bar here on the 2nd fret, also on the 4th string. So let's back that up. We have, and then there's a downstroke on the 3rd string, again behind this bar, and that's what that sounds like. And then to re-emphasize that note, I played the chord, playing like 5, 4, 3, and 2. If you can't hit all of those, just try and hit something in the middle there. So that's what that A sounds like. So then the next thing that I played is that little run. This is an awesome thing to learn because it sounds great. You're harmonizing with yourself, and it's so easy to do once you understand where we're at. So let's think about that. So we're playing an A, right? That little lick will always work. You can always pull those out of an A chord, by the way, if you're ever playing an A rhythm or even A lead. Now, but when I play this, where is that coming from? Well, let's think about where we're at. So we're playing over an A chord. So this is how my mind works. Then I think of the A, it's sounding happy, kind of country. So I'm going to try and find the A major pentatonic scale. Major meaning happy. It always sounds more positive or happy. Well, I know how to find the minor pentatonic scale for A, and I think you should too. And if you don't, I have a blues lead course that explains exactly how to do that at Active Melody. That's available for premium members. To find the minor pentatonic scale, we would play our A bar chord. We would bar here on the 5th fret, and then pattern 1 would be right here, right? Well, to get to the major, remember we go down 1, 2, 3 frets. We move everything down, all 5 patterns, by the way, and that will be the major pentatonic scale, or the happy sounding. So your takeaway then is, if pattern 1 of the A major pentatonic scale is here, look at where that is in reference to the chord. This will be a light bulb moment for some of you to realize, oh, if I'm in this chord shape, then pattern 1 was right here all along. I was using this part of the chord, which is part of the major pentatonic scale. And hopefully that's clicking with you, and you start to realize, so if I was in D, for example, where would that major pentatonic scale be? Well, it would be right on this side of it. So you can start to see how you can pull country or happy licks out of these chord shapes. It's always going back to the chord shape and what licks come out of those chord shapes. That's really the key to the whole thing, and any player will tell you that. So now that we're back here, so when I play, all I'm doing is pulling these right out of, when I'm coming up here, I'm sliding in between pattern 1 and pattern 2 of the major. So pattern 2 is there, right? So let's get into this chord shape. So I'm using my ring finger and middle finger for this, and I'm playing my middle finger on the 5th fret 2nd string, ring fingers on the 6th fret 3rd string, and I slide into that. Then I bring them both down to here. So that shape comes down 2 frets, and then I conclude that little phrase, I guess, by barring the first 3 strings and playing strings 2 and 3. So we have. So then your takeaway, if you're ever playing an A chord and you want to throw in a little fill lick, you could even walk down through a passing chord as well. And you can keep going. So that's really important to learn how that plays off of your A chord shape. Because, like I said, now you're not just limited to playing it in A. You can do it in C. You can do it in D. You can do it in D sharp. You can do it in every key. Just using that same little chord shape. All right. I know it's a diversion, but I think it's important, because the goal here in all of these lessons is not to memorize what I'm doing. Your goal is to become a player, and so hopefully these little nuggets are starting to add up, and you're learning how to do that. All right, so where was I? So okay, there's the start of it. Then we already did that, and then I went. So that's just taking this bar here on the 2nd fret. Now I scooted it down 1 more, so I'm covering the first 4 strings. Now I'm going to play string 4 and 3, and I'm going to hammer on to the 4th fret 4th string here. That's another important lick to remember. Look how it plays off the A chord. So now you have, right? And then I came right back down to how we started this, here on the 3rd fret with my middle finger, 3rd fret 5th string. There's that hammer on, fourth fret, or sorry, fourth string behind the second fret, and then there's your fourth fret, fourth string, back to the second fret on the fourth string. So, and that's how I concluded the A lick. Let's back all the way up, and I'll do it slowly. Now we're to the E, right? And to go into the E, I hit the low sixth string, which allows me to have a moment of pause so I can get my hand into a different position. And where do I go? I go right back to how we started this thing with that same little progression. Okay? So I played the first two passes of the progression, but then instead of just keeping going, I went and did a kind of a, I wanted to do something in a different octave. That was my goal. Instead of just doing that, which I could have done, I just thought it sounded more interesting to go. And that's what we're going to learn here. So what I'm doing is I'm starting on the fifth fret, and I'm borrowing the first three strings, and I'm playing them, and I'm hammering on, and I use my ring finger for this, I'm hammering onto the seventh fret on the second string. That's the first one. Now what did I create when I did that? Let's think about what chord that is. That's just a D7 chord. Just a different way to make the D7. So I'm just building a D7 by hammering it on, just like a pedal steel player would do when they're playing country. They have all these knee switches and foot pedals, and they bend into the chord, and that's what gives it that real unpredictable yet predictable sound. I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on why that's so attractive, but that's what you're doing. You're easing into the chord. And so I just knew that that's a D7 chord, and I just built the chord by going. Now that chord is not in this, E, A, B progression, but it's it would be considered like a passing tone because it's between here and here, which is where we're going. So it worked. Now this is an E7 chord. So it's just, I'm doing the same thing for each one of these. And in between, you'll see this in the tab, but in between each one of those I did a muted strum. So it went just like that. And then kept the bar there. And I came up here to the 10th fret on the second string, and then back down to the 7th fret. Or back down the 9th fret. And you know where I got this lick? I got this from Prince. There's a Prince song. Was it Kiss, maybe? There's one song where he's got that in a solo, and that's where that came from in my head. Okay, so now that we're here, we're right in position, so the next chord is the B chord, and look where we're at. This worked out perfect because we're here, and so I always think, where is the closest version of the chord I need to go to next from where I'm at? And that's a smart way to think about playing, because that way you're not all over the place and, room for error when you do it that way. So I think there's a B7 right there. That's perfect. And so that's what I did. I barred all 6 strings here on the 7th fret, and then I played, well, really just played a B chord, B major chord, take the pinky out. That's a B7 chord. It's in the tab. So now, to keep in the vein of playing this solo with chords, I wanted to play a B7 here, or a B chord. You can use a 7 or the major chord interchangeably. Either one works when you're playing a blues like this. So there's your B7. Now this is just a passing chord to get us to where we're going to go, which is up here, which is just another B chord, just playing it in a different position. So I was just thinking in terms of chord voicings. So I knew this one, and I knew this one. So, and what I did there was I just barred the first 3 strings on the 9th fret. And then I came up here and played this. That's just a D chord shape. You know how to make a D chord in first position? That's all that is. But you're making it up here so that your ring finger's on the 12th fret. Now this is important, and I've covered this in other lessons, because if you have a B chord here, look at where these 2 fingers are, skip a fret, and then come up to here. And you can play that same chord here. And why that's important is if you're playing rhythm or even lead, you can come up here and kind of work in you know, interesting chord arrangements by playing it in a different position like that. Okay, so that's what I did, and then I came down and did the exact same thing, but now over the A. So it's the same exact thing. We're just starting here now on the 5th fret. Okay? Before I move on to the closing part of part 1, let's back up all the way, rewind all the way to the beginning, and play up to where we just left off. Right? And now we're down to the E. This is just playing an E chord in first position, an A chord, and an E chord, and walking up to the B7 chord. The only difference is there's a little bit of bass, little country thing. So we got an E chord. We start with the 6th string and strum the chord. Then you come to the 3rd fret 6th string and you do a bend, a slight bend there, and then play your open 5th string. So once you do that, while that's ringing out, you can get your hand in position to play the A chord, just barring the first 4 strings there on the 2nd fret. Now we go backwards. We do the bend again down to the E. And then a walk up to the B7. That's just open A, 1st fret on the 5th string, and then your 2nd fret on the 5th string. Make sure you play that with your middle finger so that you can build the chord. Right? That's the whole first half. There's a lot in this lesson. So the second half we're going to get into a whole other thing, a whole other set of licks. But I'm going to save that for the next video. Let me go ahead and back up and play through part 1, and then I'll see you in the second video.